This is a KGW News Special Edition.
We're following more protests in Portland tonight. These, of course, come after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis police custody. This is a live look at one of the protests happening tonight in southeast Portland. Part of this group has said that they plan to start marching.
And here is a live look at what's happening downtown. You're looking at this from Sky 8. The streets around Pioneer Courthouse Square and the Justice Center are closed. A group has been marching around downtown for several hours now, and it looks like there is a line of police right around the World Trade Center. Portland once again for a third night, has an 8 p.m. curfew. Thank you for joining us for a special edition of KGW News. I'm Laurel Porter.
And I'm Brittany Folkers. Oregon Governor Kate Brown has decided to activate the National Guard and state police to help Portland police respond to the unrest if needed.
After 3 nights of protest, local law enforcement personnel are in need of assistance. After consulting with Oregon State Police Superintendent Travis Hampton, I'm sending 100 state police from around the state at state expense to support the Portland Police Bureau. I've also decided to call in 50 Oregon National Guard members to provide a support function only.
Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler and U.S. Attorney for Oregon Billy Williams both called for the National Guard to be activated this morning.
This is about how do you heal a community that has consistently been damaged over and over and over again, right? And I think the media could do a much better job of not trying to make it so simple, right? Life is not black and white. There's a lot of gray and light.
That's Portland City Commissioner Joanne Hardesty talking about the coverage of the protests and riots we saw in the city this weekend. This morning, our Brenda Braxton spoke with her about those demonstrations and the hurt in the African American community.
Commissioner, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for dialing in on Zoom. It has been an absolutely whirlwind of a weekend. Let me start off by saying, of course, you're new to City Hall, but you have been active in public advocacy for decades. I've been here 30 years. I think I've been covering you almost the entire time. Could talk to you for hours about what's going on. Yeah. But in the time that we have this morning, can I start with a couple broader questions to dive into?
Absolutely.
If somebody is watching this and they don't live in a big city and they're seeing these protests and the unfortunate violence, what's the human story about the death of George Floyd that everybody can understand no matter where they live?
The human story is, should someone die under the hands of the state for committing allegedly a crime? We don't know yet. We won't know whether or not a crime had been committed. The important thing is, would you want your son, your daughter, your mother, your father to have the experience that African Americans continue to have all across this country?
So on Saturday, after the first night of violence here in Portland, you interrupted a press conference. You spoke up. You changed the conversation, yes, saying that it was way too focused on police tactics. So we just played a few seconds of that. You were impassioned, you were yes, frustrated, you were annoyed. Yes. I want to talk more about that. Explain why it's so important to pivot away from the marches and the violence.
Yes, because there was an image that continued to play on the news of 2 young black men with one iPad apiece. And as the media continued to talk and talk and talk about the violence that had erupted, the image that the media displayed made it appear that black people were the ones that were creating this violence. And so when the media, after the press conference, simply focused on police and police tactics and really fundamentally missed the message about the harm that's been done to African Americans since our arrival in this country, I got a little frustrated, because what I want people to understand is that these protests don't happen in isolation. Brenda, I've been protesting on the streets of Portland for 30 years. But what I saw Friday night, there was major protests of nonviolent people standing up for civil rights. But we have people that infiltrate these protests for the sole purpose of creating violent interactions and destruction. This is happening all over the country. Provocateurs have been known to go into peaceful protests and start the violence. And this is what we're seeing. Even the police have confirmed that we have white nationalists and white supremacists who are really leading the violent charge. African Americans know how to peacefully protest, and we've been doing it forever. And so to blame us for the destruction was really frustrating. What I hope the media will do when they talk about this violence, because what I saw on Friday was primarily young white men that were the violent extremists on our streets. So when we talk about what's really happening, please make sure that you add that historically there have been provocateurs always that show up at peaceful protests, and they are the ones that create the violence.
What else can we in the media do to help advance and amplify the points that many are making, black and white? How do we start to unite our community during these really trying times?
Yes. And not to mention being in the middle of a pandemic, right? Now we are dealing with this racial unrest all across the country. I think what the media could do is to talk to more African American community members and get the story from their perspective, from their lived experience. Let's not just take the videos at fact, but really dig deeper and tell that personal story. I am proud of the work that Portland is doing to fundamentally change policing. We just hired a new district attorney that is very, very liberal by district attorney standards. Portland is moving forward. The mayor and I are going to co-convene a work group to review every police specialty unit. That's huge. We did that before the protests happened. We did it as part of the budget. My fear is that if we destroy our community, what we end up with is a community where no one is able to have economic security. No one is able to have civil rights. No one is able to actually live the life that we all want to live, right? So we're on a cusp of making major changes in our public safety system here. In a year and a half I've been at City Hall, it's amazing the kind of changes we've been able to make so far. But I just want to remind your listeners, the people that are starting the violence, the people that are busting windows, those people are not in it for the reasons for elevating the civil rights of Black people. Those people are in it to create damage and to create fear, because fear is what prevents us from talking to each other. Fear is what prevents white people from reaching across the aisle and asking Black people what their lived experience is. And so you could help us actually reduce the fear of the unknown, right? If you don't know anybody personally who's Black, today is the day you should go out and meet somebody who's Black, right? Keep the social distancing because we are still in a pandemic, but we have an obligation to know people as people and not just as a tagline.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a million more questions. We're out of time, unfortunately, because I really do want to dive into some other issues with you. Promise that you will come back and talk to me again. We have so much more going forward.
Anytime you want me, Brenda, I'll be back. And thank you so much for your leadership around this issue. I have seen you actually expand the conversation in a way that not too many media outlets have done. So thank you.
Commissioner Joanne Hardesty, thank you very much.
We know people are angry. We know people are hurting. And when you see those videos of what's happening all across our country, some of you may be worried about where we go from here. We spoke to the owner of Cason's Fine Meats in Northeast Portland, who has a powerful message to share.
God made one race of people and he made the human race. We're not acting like it. You can't keep on being violent. Dr. King said now is the time of healing. We're still in that stage. We took some steps up, and now we're stepping back. It doesn't make any sense to all the graffiti, all the windows broken out. We can't control that. That's anger. The Facebook YouTube, all that, that's the best thing that's happening now because it's showing all the racism and the hate and the bigotry in this nation. The cover has been pulled back. People are angry. People are angry because they have a right to be angry. We've got to take the learning, the understanding, and grow, and let's grow as a nation. Let's grow as a people. Let's get good leadership in the right places where it should be, and let's get this thing figured out. And let's work together. And I know everybody's upset. Hey, I'm upset about all the killing. If I take this man's head off, it's not gonna do no good. I'm looking with the same standards as the killer, and I'm better than that. And we should be better than that as a people. This city here is a lovely city. Born and raised, I'm a native son. It didn't have to be like that. But people are tired, and it's not done. This is just like the virus. This is phase 1. Now what's the backlash? Don't get caught out by yourself after night or you'll be found dead. Let's figure it out from the top. Let's make it right. Let's make everybody civilized again. Hey, let's be as one. I want to see Portland be a better place. I want to see the world and the nation to be a better place.
Thank you to the owner of Cason's Meats for those comments. And still to come, we're taking a look at what's happening across the country and what the president says he'll do if the violence doesn't stop.
And we want to take another look from Sky 8 at the protest going on in downtown Portland right now. This group has moved to the Burnside Bridge, and right now what you're seeing is a die-in on the bridge. Those protesters laying down, and they have been marching around downtown. Several groups have been tonight. There are now not reports of any damage or problems. A curfew does go into effect at 8 p.m. We will continue to bring you these images, bring you context and perspective as we continue to follow these protests. We're continuing to monitor protests and unrest, not just here in Portland, but across our nation. People are still pouring out into the streets in Minneapolis, Washington, D.C., New York City, and so many other places around the country. And tonight, President Trump is invoking an act that allows him to send active duty troops into the streets.
It's something that hasn't been done since the Rodney King riots of 1992.
If a city or state refuses to take the actions that are necessary to defend the life and property of their residents, then I will deploy the United States military and quickly solve the problem for them.
The president made that announcement before walking across the street from the White House to a historic church that's been vandalized. Law enforcement cleared the park of protesters using tear gas just ahead of the president's walk. The medical examiner's office has updated its autopsy report, now calling George Floyd's death a homicide. This comes after doctors who performed an independent autopsy for George Floyd's family said he died from asphyxiation due to neck and back compression. These new reports differ from the autopsy named in the criminal complaint against Officer Derek Chauvin, which cited underlying health issues and potential intoxicants in Floyd's system as factors in his death. There are a lot of false claims out there about what's happening in Minneapolis. We verify what's true and what's not when we come back. Keeping the facts straight isn't easy with all of these protests, especially with all the claims and rumors on social media. We've had our Verify team breaking down some viral falsehoods. Here's Jason Puckett.
We're focusing on viral but false claims, starting with this post claiming to show a document that a rioter dropped. The document details behavior for protesters and tells them what props to bring, how aggressive to be, and to, quote, stick to their personality profile assignment. This claim is being shared as proof that some protesters are paid actors, but it's false. We know because a reverse image search shows this exact same image online all the way back in 2015. Meaning claims this was dropped and found in one of the protests this weekend are false. Next, this viral photo claiming to show a tweet from President Trump. It says he spoke with George Floyd's family, that they were honored to hear from him, and that he doesn't want another black man to die by a knee to the neck because there are better ways to die. This is not a real tweet from the president. It is true that Trump had a phone call with George Floyd's family this week, but we can verify he did not tweet this. It is a fabricated, false tweet. Finally, we want to bring your attention to a few websites that look like news sites but are actually sharing false info. We've seen articles that Officer Derek Chauvin committed suicide and claims that black officers were banned from guarding him in jail. Remember, Chauvin is the fired Minneapolis police officer charged with murdering Floyd. Neither claim is actually true. Chauvin is alive, and the Ramsey County Sheriff did not ban black officers from guarding him. It's a good idea to check the site before you share any information. If you run into a name you haven't seen before, like W24 News, take a minute to look them up before you share their stories. With your Verify, I'm Jason Puckett.
It has no doubt been a tough weekend for a lot of people here in Portland and across the country. But after the break, we've got a look at some of the positive moments that have come out of all these protests. And we'll also check in on the protests happening right now, the fourth day of protests in our city. Welcome back. Despite the tense moments we saw during the weekend's demonstrations, there were many others of peace and solidarity.
Our Cassidy Quinn has a look at those.
Yes, so much that came out of our city this weekend is positive. Protesters working together, police officers showing their support, and the community working together to enact real change. First, we have to start with this inspiring video from Sunday afternoon. Protesters and police officers hugging and high-fiving each other as police took a knee in solidarity. Ryan Au captured the video as he walked by the demonstration.
All of a sudden I see some people hugging a police officer, and I'm like, what? So I come running down here to document this, and I just was blown away. I think we saw a historic moment happen just now. Go Portland, right on.
Next, this powerful sight from Sky 8. Sunday night, as the sun set on a busy weekend, thousands of people marched across the Burnside Bridge. The group started as a rally in Laurelhurst Park and marched across town. It's estimated this line of people went back an entire mile. Now, while thousands marched outside, hundreds took steps towards change virtually. The Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing held a special meeting on Zoom to discuss the killing of George Floyd and police violence in Portland. Anyone was invited to join, and when the call started, there were over 250 people logged on.
Because this work is hard, and it hits you in the chest. It's personal for most of us who do this work. Even if you're not Black or you're not brown, you're a member of the community, it should be personal for you.
I mean, I just appreciate people being here listening. Don't let this be the last time you listen to folks, man. Even in real life, you having these type of tension type conversations, just listen, man. At the end of the day, I'm not white, you're not Black. So at the end of the day, listen to my experience because you don't know it, and I'll listen to yours at the end of the day.
By the end of the meeting, the group passed a resolution demanding that qualified immunity for police officers be abolished to hold law enforcement accountable for any misconduct. And in another meeting, taking place while protesters lined up outside of the Justice Center last night, a few community members were inside meeting with the Portland Police Chief about how police engagement can be better moving forward.
They did say that they were willing to set, I'm going to call tomorrow. We can set a date to try to bring the community together with the police.
Now maybe you've been watching, wondering, how can I do something positive to help? The president of Portland's NAACP suggests you join that organization to show your support. It's open to people of all colors. We also have a list of more resources on our website at kgw.com.
And we thank you for joining us for this special edition of KGW News. We're going to leave you with this live look from Sky 8 over some protesters marching towards downtown.
Yeah, a large group is on the Burnside Bridge right now, while a second group just started marching from Revolution Hall in southeast Portland.
We want to remind you, too, that, we have a curfew that begins in just over half an hour at 8 o'clock. And we will have another update for you at 8 o'clock here on KGW and continue to monitor the situation and cut in as warranted. We hope you have a good evening and also join us tonight for the 11 o'clock news.